Greece's unions are holding their third general strike in 6 weeks to press dissenters in the country's troubled coalition government not to back a major new austerity program that will doom Greeks to further hardship in a sixth year of recession. 2 days of demonstrations started Tuesday, continuing until lawmakers vote late Wednesday on the bill to slash $17.3 billion from budget spending over 2 years. Airlines stopped flying. Schools were shuttered and trains and taxis stood still Tuesday as hundreds of thousands of Greek workers stayed off the job to protest pension and wage cuts that the debt-ridden government must enact to qualify for loans from Europe. Most of the Greeks on strike were public service union members who would be most affected by the cuts that the parliament is scheduled to vote on Wednesday. Flights to and from the country stopped for 3 hours at the start of a 48-hour strike, leaving Athens without public transportation and putting state hospitals on emergency staffing. About 30,000 people marched in Athens into separate demonstrations organized by labor unions that have been criticized by European Union members for bloated salaries and benefits that have exacerbated Greece's debt. Another 20,000 union members gathered to protest in the country's second-largest city of Thessaloniki. Union leaders said the demonstrations will continue on Wednesday when lawmakers vote on $17.3 billion of spending cuts and tax increases over the next 2 years. Rejection of the savings package would leave Greece facing the threat of a default on its mountain of debt that could force it to eventually exit the Euro bloc of 17 nations that use the euro as currency. Conservative Prime Minister Antonis Samaras, who formed the government in June after the previous government was ousted over its inability to please voters or European lenders, says the cuts must be enacted. But a coalition of leftist parties that Samaras needed to form a majority in parliament and take over the government says it will not back the measures. They say Greece should default on its debt payments and force European banks to absorb the loss. The government's majority is narrowing and the general strike further puts pressure on MPs to vote against the government's plans, said Martin Coering of the Economist Intelligence Unit. On balance, however, we expect the package to be approved by MPs because the alternative would be the government running out of cash and facing default and potential euro exit. Markets in Europe were up slightly on Tuesday. The government has 176 of Parliament's 300 seats so cannot afford to lose many votes to maintain a 151-vote majority. The main opposition party, the Radical Left Coalition, has urged demonstrators to surround Parliament during Wednesday night's vote. The new measures must not pass or they will turn the country into a financial and social desert, a party statement said. They will lead us decades back, without medicine or state health care, without schools and universities, without a future, with endless armies of unemployed, suicides and desperate people. The measures include new deep pension cuts and tax hikes, a 2-year increase in the retirement age to 67, and laws that will make it easier to fire and transfer civil servants. The country is in a deep recession set to enter a 6th year, and has record high unemployment of 25%. If Parliament rejects the so-called austerity package, Greece will lose access to the rescue loans from the European Union and International Monetary Fund that have kept it afloat since May 2010. The country would then run out of money, as soon as by November 16, according to Samaras, default on its debts and, most likely, abandon the 17-member Eurozone. On Tuesday, Greece raised $1.6 billion in a 26-week Treasury bill auction that saw its borrowing costs ease slightly to 4.41%, from 4.46% last month. Demand was 1.7 times the amount being offered.